And then lastly, and critically important, is our efforts in partnering. And I think some of you have heard a little bit about what we do in partnering, but partnering is critically important for our success in the research department. So the last third of the talk, I'm going to talk to you about all the ways in which we partner. And it's incredibly important because as I assess the research department this year, I realized that we can really use leverage. So yes, we need to fund research, but I want other people funding as well in the type 1 space. And we have a strategy put in place to really start leveraging other funders that are funding in type 1 diabetes, which is critically important. So I want to talk to you about all the areas in which we're partnering in. So these are some of our statistics, just so you know, and you saw them a little bit ago, but we actually funded, we're closing out the books in 2 weeks, so we just did a really huge spring review on new research that we just brought into the portfolio. We actually funded we will fund $124 million this year in total commitments, which is amazing. We fund research in 19 countries, so we are an international research organization. We will fund research wherever we think there is good research. I am committed to funding internationally and finding the best investigators to do the research. We have now funded more than 50 clinical trials, and you have to fund clinical trials if you're going to come up with new therapies and new ideas of treatment for type 1. So I think that is something to be incredibly proud of. You're going to see us do more in this space. It's important to do that. I talked about all the locations internationally. It's a pleasure to announce today that Australia just announced, we lost our slides. I'll keep talking and you can get them back. Australia just announced yesterday, our international affiliate, that they've just launched their new, did I touch something? No. They just launched their clinical trial network, which is very exciting. This is going to be a clinical trial network on the ground in Australia to actually evaluate any new therapies, do new clinical research, so that's exciting. And next week on the 20th, Canada will be launching their clinical trial network, starting in southern Ontario, but planning to go pan-Canada. This is another clinical research network that we'll be able to tap to do clinical research. So in this month, 2 new clinical trial networks have been announced, of which we fund, so it's very exciting. So let's talk about what are we doing in the research portfolio this year for FY12. We're changing things, we're evolving. We're going to do our processes internally differently so that we could be more effective and efficient in our funding. We are absolutely going to be strategic. Each and every priority research area of which we're going to be funding in, there will be a strategic research plan, and this will be a 5-year research plan. In order to continue on the path, you have to have a strategy and you have to follow it. Now, we'll be developing these in our priority areas, and I'm going to show you what those priority areas are this year. And those strategic plans will be available for the most part. Some of it is confidential, so it has to be redacted, but these research plans will be available for everyone to read, to see what we're doing in these priority research areas. I indicated we're going to be more focused, and that's true. We are going to be more focused. In order to drive and accelerate research, we have to focus. So there will be some things we won't be doing. It's the way it is, in order to make sure that we're putting the funding behind the areas that we think have a chance to get to the patient. We are absolutely going to increase our funding in the translational space, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I talked about the strategic research plans that will be developed for each of our priority areas, and those are underway right now. We are going to manage our research. In the past, a lot of the funding we were doing, we would identify the opportunity, it would be developed, sometimes with us, sometimes not. We would fund it, and we would go away. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to fund it, and we're going to stay on it, and we're going to make sure they're doing what they said they were going to do, and we're going to make them accountable for the money we give them to drive the research. And if they don't do that, we're going to take the money back. Because when we fund, and we fund a lot of money, $124 million, that's a lot of money, we expect results. And if they can't deliver results, we'll find somebody that can. So we are going to manage our research grants, and we're going to manage them hard. So you're going to see in a few minutes what this research team looks like, and I expect them to be managing each and every one of the grants that we're going to be funding going forward. This is critically important because, you know, if we're putting the hard money on the table, we want to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for. So this is also something that I'm very strong about. And then we're going to do some new initiatives. One of the things that I really identified as a very big gap are what we call biomarkers, and I'm going to tell you what those are. This is an opportunity in the research area that we could fund and have very broad impact. And so I think JDRF plays a very big role in what we call biomarkers. And then, of course, I'm going to talk to you about why we have to partner with industry. And when I say industry, I am talking about the pharmaceutical business, and I'm talking about biotech. So in the last part of this talk, I'll talk to you about why we need to fund there and why it's important. So what's our role in the whole type 1 diabetes community? It is we will lead and take actually a leadership role in the type 1 space. I was on the phone yesterday. We had brought together all the investors in the type 1 diabetes space in the research arena, and we've been trying to foster and put this group together to try to work together as a team. So it's not just JDRF in the game, it's Helmsley's Trust, it's BREM, it's all those funders, it's NIH, it's all them out there that are funding type 1 diabetes. We want to come together and work collaboratively so that we can leverage each other. So that's another thing that we've been putting in place, and I think it's going to have huge impact to not only drive JDRF's money, but to be driving other type 1 diabetes research organizations' money. We're going to focus on certain parts of our pipeline. I told you that. When I came in to the organization to take over this role, I kept hearing JDRF's role is to fill a gap. JDRF's role is to fill a gap. So if somebody's not funding there, we're going to fund there. I agree. That is our role. But I think our role is much bigger than that. And you're going to start hearing us speak a little bit different. It is true, our role is to fill a gap. But what I said when I took over the department is, I'm going to identify what our roles and responsibilities are. And when we fund, we're going to fund on all of these areas. So yes, we will fill gaps where nobody else is funding. Secondly, we will accelerate progress. So maybe somebody's funding there, and on the phone yesterday with all the type 1 diabetes funders, I said to them, okay, we all think we're gap filling, but how about we leverage each other and get on something that we think could be transformative or closer to the cure. If we put our money together, we could accelerate the progress. If we don't put our money together, we can't. So I would also argue that JDRF's role in the research department is to accelerate progress. So that's number 2. Number 3, we sit an awesome position. Me coming out of pharmaceutics can tell you that. For example, we can force collaboration. We have a seat at the regulators' table that pharmaceutics and biotechs do not have. Why? Because we're patient advocates. So we need to foster as many collaborations as possible, whether we're fostering the type 1 diabetes research organizations to work together, whether we're fostering collaborations with companies to work with the regulators to get new therapies. There's all different ways of which we should be fostering collaborations to move the research. And so that's number 3. Number 4, creating leverage. And this is what I talked to the funders about yesterday. We can leverage each other, and we should. If we're all in this to find the cure, then we should work together to do it. And we don't have to compete against each other. We can work synergistically. And so I truly believe JDRF's research department can create leverage. And we're doing that by bringing these funders together. Identifying new opportunities. One of the things that we're trying to get these funders to do is tell us what they are doing. And if they'll tell us what they're doing, and we tell them what we're doing, We should be able to map that out and figure out what we're not doing. So by creating this landscape of what all the research in type 1 diabetes is, we will absolutely know where it is we're not doing something that we should be doing. So I think that's absolutely critically important. And then again, one of the things that we've not been doing